Yo guys, what is going on? I got some BT22 rules for you guys today. So we're just going to be talking about a lot of the new cards interactions in the new Cyber Sleuth set. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, so first let's talk about the new Cyber Sleuth archetype. This deck is all about kind of getting multiple same level cards in your stack. A lot of the effects reference having like different sources and materials or different levels in the materials and stuff. So what I want to talk about first is going to be Ami, one of your main tamers that you can be utilizing. Memory setter, but then also she says when any of your Digimon digivolve into a Digimon with the CS trait, if it has a Digivolution card with the same levels as the Digivolve Digimon, suspend this tamer, it may evolve for free. So it's a lot of stuff to kind of digest, but it's a little bit more simple than it might seem. So let's talk about the case of one Ami. So let's say we've got something like a Terriermon with a Gargomon underneath it, and then what we do is we're going to go ahead and digivolve this Gargomon for 2 because it evolves for 2 over a CS, so digivolve for 2, and then it's one digivolving as well as Ami would trigger. So let's just say we're going to do the one digivolving effect just to be optimal. If we've got one or fewer tamers, we can play a tamer card with the CS trait from hand. So we've got tamer CS trait right here. So boom, we're going to play this one. And then this also saw the Digivolution. Keep in mind you won't be able to use this new one since it was played after the fact. This is going to trigger. So then number 1, it looks for the trigger condition is it looks for a Digimon that digivolved into a CS trait. Okay, so we check that point because Gargomon is a CS trait. So that's the first thing you got to look for is, did the thing you just digivolved into have CS trait? Then the activation condition is if it has a Digivolution card with the same level as the Digivolve Digimon. So the Digivolve Digimon is going to be the Gargomon here, and it does in fact have a same level, a level 4, in the source already. So that's met as well. So then what we can do is, by suspending it, we can Digivolve that Digimon into a CS without paying the cost. So boom, we suspend this, Digivolve into this Inframon as a CS trait. So we're going to evolve this without paying the cost, keeping our memory gauge at 1 here. And then we would get any subsequent one digivolving effects. In this case, popping something 5 cost or less, and then nothing else applies here. Okay, what about with the case of double Ami? So in that case, we could actually trigger, like once we digivolve this Inframon, the newest triggers would then be the Inframon plus the second Ami that we had. But in this case, it does meet the trigger condition, but just not the activation condition, because in this case, it doesn't actually have a same level card. It doesn't have a level 5 in the source. But in the case of maybe... So then let's say our stack is something like this. I don't know how in this, I haven't actually played this deck, so I don't actually know how you would get this in there, but let's say our stack is something like this, and then what we're going to do is, okay, we're going to digivolve Terriermon into the Gargomon for 2 just as before. Now, just as before, this will trigger as well as these 2 Amis. In the case of Gargomon, we actually have more than one tamer, so we can't actually use this even if we had another tamer, but let's go ahead and use the first Ami, and then once again, they trigger because they saw CS digivolve, and in this case, we do have the Gargomon in the source. So boom, we're going to digivolve Inframon for free. And then our newest triggers will then be Inframon, as well as the second Ami actually does trigger again. So then we can go ahead and use this to pop something if we want. And then we can go ahead and use the second Ami suspended, since it does now have a level 5, a same level as the newly digivolved Digimon. We can then go ahead and go into another CS for free. So in this case, Alphamon for free. And then we would get its one digivolving -5 to something. So the kind of stuff you can do with this deck is pretty cool. But yeah, just keep in mind, you kind of got to just break this effect down piece by piece. And then speaking of Alphamon, this new BT22 Alphamon has this really cool condition. Down where it says Digivolve level 5 with CS and trait for a cost of 3. That's pretty normal for archetypes these days. But it also says while you have 3 or fewer security cards from Kyoko Kuremi for a cost of 5. So that's pretty cool. What you can basically do this is exactly what it looks like. So let's say it's the start of my turn, I'm at 3 memory or something, and I've got this Alphamon in my hand. What I could do is go ahead and digivolve it over the CS trait for a cost of 3, or if I wanted to use the digivolve for 4 cost over a level 5 black, I could also do that. But I could, in fact, since I'm at 0 security, just straight up slap it on Kyoko for a cost of 5, and then get any one digivolving effects just like normal. The other thing you can do with Kyoko says, when this Digimon unsuspends, if you don't have Alphamon, this tamer, may digivolve into Alphamon in the hand with the Digivolution cost reduced by 2. Now, there's the main thing to keep in mind with this is that this does not ignore Digivolution requirements. Therefore, the only Alphamon in the game that this can currently, you can use this your turn once per turn effect to Digivolve into, is this Cyber Sleuth BT22 Alphamon. Because Kyoko does not ignore Digivolution cost / requirements or whatever, you still have to meet all that. It just costs 2 less. So in this case, let's say previously, you know, something got deleted, so I'd use the when any of your level 4 higher CS trait were Digivolved, were deleted by suspending this trainer and grab back a piece from trash, and then let's say it's my turn during the unsuspend phase before I draw. So let's say before I draw, during the unsuspend phase, this is going to unsuspend, and then that will trigger this effect of when this tamer unsuspends. If you don't have Alphamon, as Digimon, as tamer may Digivolve into Alphamon for -2. So since I do have 3 or fewer security cards, this condition to Digivolve is active, and because I'm using Kyoko to Digivolve it, it will be for a -2 cost, so effectively for that 3 cost over Kyoko. And then, I guess in this case I might deck out. So let's say I have 2 cards in deck. So I'll draw for that Digivolve, and then I would get any one Digivolving effects from Alphamon, so in this case -5,000 or something, so let's just say -5,000 to the LordKnight, and then I would draw for turn. And I could also use the Amis, but there's no same level cards into the Alphamon, so I would just go ahead and draw for turn after that. Okay, so Alphamon, really cool, but keep in mind Kyoko, you can only use it with this Alphamon. And in the exact same vein, the other Warp Tamer, Rie, you can only use with this specific LordKnight, because once again, Rie says, she has a little bit of a different condition, but she basically says, by deleting one of your other Digimon Tamers with Knightmon /CS, you can Digivolve into LordKnight with the Digivolution cost reduced by 3. Really good effect. However, it doesn't ignore Digivolution requirements. So in this case, let's say, I don't know, I pass turn at 3 or something, and then end of turn triggers. So currently, I can delete something on my field. So let's say I go ahead and delete the Alphamon here. By deleting one of my other Digimon or Tamers with CS, I can Digivolve into LordKnight for a -3, and then this condition is pretty much the same as the Alphamon, where it says, while you have 3 or fewer for a cost of 5. So then in this case, it is going to be a cost of 2. And then in this case, let's say, like, you had something with an on deletion that you did delete. In this case, I don't. But if I did, you could go ahead and trigger the on deletion of whatever you popped with the Rie effect in tandem with the LordKnight on Digivolving, so you could choose the order. Not that, I mean, that might matter a little bit, but in this case, I would just go, okay, get 3 plus 3,000, then I may attack a player, and then in this case, I've got Raid Reboot, so I can go ahead and raid into the Alphamon. And then I can also trigger the All Turns when Digimon attack players, which is either my opponent attacking me or me attacking my opponent. I get to, you know, reveal my top deck and play something, etc. So this card, I think, is pretty neat. But yeah, just keep in mind that once again, you can't ignore Digivolution requirements with these cards. And the next card, again in the CS vein, I want to talk about is going to be Leopardmon Ace. This card's pretty cool. You can do some kind of funny things with it. So it's an Ace, of course. The main thing I want to talk about is going to be the All Turns. Once per turn 1, any of your other Digimon would leave the battle area, gain 2 memory. So let's say, you know, this is in my hand. This also does have a black box over a CS trait for a cost of 3. So let's say my board is something like this, and my opponent's going to go ahead and like try to swing for game right now. They get their one attack into -5,000 or something. And then Ace timing, what I could do is go ahead and Digivolve Leopardmon here, and then Leopardmon lets me play something 5,000 or lower from hand, and then all my level 3 or higher gain blockers. So let's say I go ahead and play like a Terriermon here, and then everything gains blocker, and then I go ahead and redirect the attack here. Of course, I'd get this LordKnight effect as well before the Ace timing actually. But anyway, so we'd go ahead and redirect, and then they're about to do battle. Terriermon is about to get deleted. When it would leave the field, the Leopardmon is actually going to yoink 2 memory here. It'll get deleted. So the thing I want to keep in mind is like what does and doesn't trigger this leaving the battle area effect. Of course, anything you think would, like returning to hand, deck, being put on security, being deleted by battle, sent to the trash, that sort of thing, all triggers it. An example of something that doesn't is kind of counterintuitive maybe, because it's in the CS deck. But for example, this Terriermon main effect that says by placing the CS trait Digimon's top stack card as its bottom Digivolution card and draw one. So in this case, you might think you could go, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do that by placing this here, about to draw one, and then Leopardmon Ace here would give me 2 memory, and I'd resolve this, boom, and then draw my card. But the thing is that this stack, this Digimon, isn't leaving the battle area. Its top card is simply being moved. So it doesn't fulfill the condition of when your other Digimon would leave the battle area, because ultimately this Mon is still here. Even though, like, the top card is now a Digivolution card, the whole thing, like, it would be one thing if you were, you know, doing this versus something like a Bagramon or a Rest Your Superior mode or something that would, like, put the Gargomon as, like, the bottom source of my Kyoko, and then this would get sent to trash. Would trigger the Leopardmon to give me back to memory. But pretty much any other form of removal. De-digivolving is one thing that doesn't, keep in mind. Say in the example of I'm playing Royal Knights for some reason, and I've got a Drizzle underneath here. Boom. Let's say I've got a bunch of sources, and it's started my main phase. And then what Yigi's going to do, it's going to suck up the Leopard Ace as well as the LordKnightmon. Because these are both Royal Knight trait Digimon. And again, I don't know how you would have a stack here, but let's say maybe you just have like a bunch of random Digimon here, and since these Digimon would leave the battle area, Leopard says when any of your other Digimon would, and in this case LordKnight is about to be removed, being put under Yggdrasil. So in this case you would actually gain 2 memory here, sucking up these, and then keep in mind that Overflow doesn't trigger here, because Overflow specifically says if it moves from field or under a card to an area other than those, so it can move to under a card and not trigger, but it will trigger via leaving the battle area, if that makes sense. Well, specifically because you had another Digimon, it wouldn't work if Leopardmon was just by here, by itself. But Yggdrasil sucking up the Knights does in fact trigger its all turns. Another funny thing is this Dromojimon, where it says this Digimon may move to your empty breeding area. So let's say my breeding area is empty and I pass the turn to my opponent at 1 or something. This is about to go move, and then Leopardmon will give me back 2 memory, put this here, and then I can kind of continue my turn. Not that I don't know why you would ever be playing this card, but yeah, in arcade it happens way more frequently. Okay, the next thing, and pretty much the last CS archetype I want to talk about, is going to be the Flame card. So Jimmy Ken and his fiery boys here. So Jimmy Ken has a pretty interesting effect where it says when your Digimon are played or Digivolve, if any of them have Flame or CS, by suspending this Tamer, activate one of those Digimon's main effects, and then if this activated, gain 1 memory. So the biggest thing I want to say here is when you have an effect that references another effect, like activate this Digimon's main effect, or activate this Digimon's on play, or activate this Digimon's when Digivolving. Other examples of this would be something like, so then let's say I've got something like a Meramon and I want to Digivolve it into blue Meramon here. So what I'm going to do is go ahead, Digivolve, pay the 3 cost, draw for Digivolve, whatever. Ami and my other Tamer is not going to do anything here. But what we can do is use Jimmy Ken. Since Jimmy Ken says when your Digimon are played or Digivolve, okay, we met the trigger condition. If any of them have Flame or CS trait, we got Flame CS right here. Boom, activation condition met. We can suspend this Tamer and then activate one of that Digimon's main effects. So then we're basically kind of using the main effect as a wooden Digivolving, and then we go ahead and use the main effect by paying 3 cost. We can then play something from trash that's 5 or lower, CS trait or Flame, so play this. Then this Digimon may attack, but then of course we have to go back to Jimmy Ken that says if this activated any effect to gain 1 memory, so gain 1, and then we could go ahead and use Alliance if we wanted to go ahead and do 2 checks at 9k, 10k here. So that's all fine and dandy. Wow, this deck is terrible. But the other thing I wanna mention is that if, for example, try to use the second Jimmy Ken, because it did see the blue Meramon get Digivolved, and we could we could do this. We could just suspend this Tamer to try to activate its main effect. And of course, in this case, it does actually have a second main effect from the Terriermon here. Let's say in the case if it didn't, it just had this stack. We couldn't actually do, like, we could suspend this and then nothing would get activated because we can't, because it's a once per turn, and then we wouldn't gain a memory here. So there's really just no point in suspending it. But in the case of, let's say we had Terriermon underneath, so we already used this once per turn main, we could go ahead and use this once per turn main. So we could go ahead and do this, and then putting the top stack card here, draw 1, and then since it's activated, gain 1 memory. And then we'd be in a position to maybe use this effect if we wanted to, since we had it this turn. But yeah, so my point is, even if you've got multiple Jimmy Kens, you cannot bypass like the once per turn clause on this, because it's the same Digimon and we've already activated the effect once already. Now, the exception to this is this card, which says this Digimon gains all main effects of his Digivolution cards with the Flame trait. So effectively what it does, what Boltmon does, is it turns all these main effects from Blue Meramon and Meramon into like copies. So for example, let's say we did that exact same play. We went from 10 to 7 by digivolving Blue Meramon, and then we used 1 Jimmy Ken to go ahead and activate its main effect to pay the 3 cost, play this guy, gain back the memory. And then what we did is go ahead and digivolve into Boltmon here for 4. And then I don't think, yeah, he doesn't have any when digivolving effects, but then what we could do is just go ahead and activate this effect again, either via his effect or either like via Jimmy Ken, because Jimmy Ken also says, again, like when something is digivolved, it was Flame or CS, you can spend to activate one of its main effects. So currently, the main effects we do have are the main effect from Blue Mera, the main effect from Mera, and then the main effect from Terrier. This one we used once, I guess, like on the previous stack, but basically this makes copies of all of these. Think of them as like inherited effects or something, rather than like being tied to Blue Meramon specifically. So now we have 3 main effects we could choose from in the case of the second Jimmy Ken, and then we could go like, okay, well, let's say I just want to use the Blue Meramon again. So what we could do is use the Blue Meramon again, pay the 3 cost, maybe if we had another guy, play another guy, and then we could attack, and then gain the memory, and then any one attackings would be once per turn, delete one of your opponent's Digimon on the lowest level. Okay, go ahead and delete this Terriermon, and then yep, that's pretty much it. So really kind of complicated for like a terrible deck that I doubt like no one watching this video will ever play. But you know what? If you're like one of the 5 people out there who wants to play Flame, there you go. And then the very last thing I want to talk about is going to be Galaxy, specifically just the Lacusmon here. This Lacusmon says, if this Digimon stack has 2 or more same level cards, you may play 1 Tamer with the Nightclaw or Lightfang from your hand or without paying the cost, but this effect can't play cards with the same name as any of your Tamers. So 2 parts to this effect I want to talk about. First of all, this Digimon stack has 2 or more same level cards. We've seen this terminology a little bit more recently. What this means is as long as somewhere in the stack, including the top card, has this 2 of the same level. So in this case, if let's say I had a Lunamon here with a Lacusmon or Lacusmon as an inherited, and then we go ahead and digivolve this, let's say I'm at like 3, digivolve for 2, because it digivolves over Nightclaw / Lightfang for 2, and then this stack includes this top card as well as this inherited. So since we do have 2 level 4s in the stack, we can go ahead and play out one of these 2 Tamers. Now the second part is you can't have the same name as an existing Tamer. So let's say if I have nothing on board, nothing like Lifeline Galaxy related, I can play either of these. So I can play Code Sayo, I could play Sayo. Let's say if I have Sayo on board, what I wouldn't be able to do is play another Sayo from hand, because obviously they're both named Sayo. But what we could do is you could play Ko and Sayo, because these are 2 different names. The one has the name Ko and Sayo, one has the name Sayo, or vice versa. If I had Ko Sayo, I could play Sayo. The thing that this doesn't, like, keep in mind, like, they might share like Sayo in the names, but it's not worded as if you can't share names amongst the names in your tamer, if that makes sense. It just means like straight up different names. So think of like Guilmon versus Guilmon X Antibody. These are just two different cards that happen to share some letters in there, but basically, yeah. So you can, if you've got one or the other, like if you've got the red tamer, you can play Sayo for free and vice versa. But you can't obviously like double up for this. Similarly, if you had like Ko Sayo, you could play Sayo Ko from your hand as well. So that's just really the only thing with Galaxy I want to talk about. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much it for the BT22 rule video. Comment down below if that was helpful at all, or if you guys have anything else you want to ask. But thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.